Hello, this is Celeste of Astrology by Celeste, and I'm excited to have a special guest today, astrologer Erika Beach. And we're going to be talking about a fixed star, Ross Alhauge, which some famous people have it prominent in their charts. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about Taylor Swift, we're going to talk about the president, we're going to talk about Zoe Kravitz, and more. And we're going to nerd out a little bit on some astrology lore and just talk about this star. So, Erica, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody in case they don't know who you are?
Hi, Celeste. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. As she mentioned, I am an astrologer, but I'm also a licensed clinical social worker. So I have over 20 years experience in mental health, and I am currently one of the teaching assistants and tutors at Nightlight Astrology with Adam Ellenboss, and I am part of the year 3 class counseling skills in astrological counseling. So I get to bring in all my therapeutic and mental health experience in there. And so that's kind of what I do right now. I'm really heavy into research, specifically fixed stars. I have like a whole bucket of fixed stars that I love to work with and go deep with. And so that's kind of what I do is just incorporate astrological counseling and myths. Yeah, and working with fixed stars more so recently in the last, I would say, 4 years.
Wonderful. So, we're going to talk about Ross Alhauge today. Did I say it wrong again?
To be honest, I've always been saying it Ross Alhague, but I hear
Okay.
Ross Alhague, Ross Alhague.
Well, whatever you want to, however you want to pronounce it. First, let's talk about fixed stars in general. How do you use them and what are they?
The fixed stars, as we know, they're the stars that don't move. And the planets were considered as the wanderers. And the fixed stars live in the constellations, right? In the atmosphere. And s- fixed stars don't always fall on the zodiac sign. We have the fixed stars that are on the ecliptic. And so we also have fixed stars that are in other constellations that don't fall in the ecliptic, that aren't as loud, let's just say. But I think fixed stars bring such a beautiful mythical archetype to a chart. It's one of those things where you cannot use fixed stars alone. You have to understand the chart first, understand the natal promise. How is the sun or Venus, Mercury working in the natal context? And then bringing in a fixed star. You have this conjunct this fixed star that could play out this kind of archetype, this mythic archetype. And fixed stars, normally what they are, I see them as interrupters in charts. They normally bring themes of crisis intervention, moral responsibility, knowledge that changes fate, right? So we have a lot of fixed stars that are in different categories, right? That give different storylines, I like to call it. And you have the stars that rise, which are usually the royal stars. You have the stars that give you gifts. Those are the creative stars. You have stars that bring trials. Those are the warrior stars. Then we have wisdom stars, or healing stars, which is Ras Al Hag. Then we have the not so favorite, the ones that bring transformation, right? Shadow stars, Algol.
Yes.
And you know what? Just side note, I have endured this love for Algol. I was born with the moon rising with Algol. So I really was like, this can't just be all shadow and negative. And so I've found a really kind of beautiful way of seeing her and Medusa, her myth. And so that kind of actually blend a little bit with Asclepius, the myth that Ras Alhauge belongs to. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, Algol is one of those transformation stars for
Yes,
sure.
known as the beheading star, the demon star, the one people are really
Yeah,
scared of and is active right now because
it is.
Uranus is next to Algol right now. So we're seeing a lot of stories, especially with the Jeffrey Epstein saga, where Algol is bringing justice and vengeance and beheading some of these figures, figuratively,
Yeah,
who have harmed girls, women, and what have you, and people
yeah.
in general. Mhm.
Almost that concept of people losing their minds. That's how I see it. Like, you're losing my mind. I need to quit, or things are going to come up. So yeah, you see that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and so yeah, we have these stars, right, that fall into these theory and these, and I know you. How do we work with them, or how do we use them? And so, just really quickly, because obviously this is something that we can go really deep in. But when we're using fixed stars, there's two ways to work with fixed stars. I work with both ways. One is the degree aspect, which most of us, that's I think what is mostly used. Here we use the degree with the the planet conjunction, or you can use it by parens. And that's actually one of my preferred methods to use, just because it really tells, it's more of like a heliacal rising type of story where the person carries that mythic story or that mythic archetype throughout their entire life. Where when we're looking at just like a degree conjunction, it's almost just like they're putting on a costume. Bernadette Brady is one of the ones who revived the parans and how to work with the Fixar via parans. And she has her rising sign conjunct Ross Alhauge, which I'll talk a little bit more later. But she mentions that when it comes really quickly, because again, this is another subject that can confuse people. But once you understand it, you get it. And it's like snowboarding. It's really hard to get the basics, but then once you get it, it's really easy. Anyways, and so it's what it really is. Instead of looking at the degrees conjunction, you're looking at the relationship between a planet and an angularity, whether if there was a planet at the same time that a fixed star was at an angle. So it could be a conjunction, or I mean, I'm sorry, it could be on the ascendant, the midheaven, the descendant, or the nadir, the IC. I I don't tend to use the IC because that's one of the ways that Bernadette Brady explains parens is when it's in the nadir, it could be legacy, it could be beyond life, the afterlife. Whereas if there's a star at the ascendant, it's usually at the beginning. If the sun is there, it carries it in its chariot throughout its lifetime. If it's the angle or the planet is a relationship with the midheaven, later on in midlife, and then descendant towards, older lives. That's one of the ways, and it's within a 24-hour period. So it's not just the chart, the time, but it's within a 24-hour period. And it is based off location. So if you don't have a time or location, it's really difficult to do parens unless the person was born the day the sun was rising with one of the fixed stars. For purposes of today's what we're discussing, we'll just stick to degree aspects because I think it is easier. But Bernadette Brady did explain parens is someone, it's the stage and they have the microphone and you know who's talking. They're on the stage at a play. And whereas the degree aspect is just the person wearing the costume and they're off stage. You don't know what that person or that fixed star is doing, but you know it's there. I also see it like the playbill. You have the playbill, you have like, these are all the characters, but you don't really know what their function is yet until you go onto the play and you see it. That's parens. You're live watching. You know what's happening versus these are kind of the topics. So that's kind of a quick overview. That's one of the ways, but again, it is the most common is the degree aspect, which is easier to do visually.
yeah. So let
And
me
we want to
put
use 3-degree separation. I think that's important to mention. So you can go to 5, but 3 degrees, I think, is that we would want to use with fixed stars.
And do you always use just conjunctions or do you use any other aspect?
Yes, conjunctions only. However, if you do have a lot of these fixed stars do fall in like a axis, especially the royal stars, they fall into an axis. So if you do have a planet opposing it, then it's going to affect your chart, obviously. But we want to stick strictly to conjunctions. And then we want to use transits to activate those, as well as progressions. Progressions are important too. And transits, progressions, and a fixed star conjunct a planet in your solar chart, those give you temporary access to fixed stars. So it's just because you don't have a fixed star in your chart by progression, you might have a fixed star. Like, for example, I currently have my progressed Venus at 22 degrees Sagittarius, and it's conjunct Ross Alhague. And the last 2 years, I've really been digging deep into this fixed star. I have no idea how I came across it. Maybe because of Taylor Swift's chart that I'm always like going in, but I found it and I've just been nonstop and things just keep coming, right? When you start researching, things just start popping to you and yeah. But yeah,
Cool.
you want to use those. Those are the, I would call them temporary access and conjunctions only. And also staying with the visible planets. I would not use Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. I know that Bernadette Brady has, what do you call them, delineations, for the outer planets, but we have to remember those are collective planets. So a lot of us are going to have that. I have Neptune at 22 Sagittarius, but I haven't really seen it other than recently in the last 2 years that I've got temporary access with Venus right on that fixed star.
Cool. So tell us, what is this fixed star? What degree is it? What are the meanings of it?
Yeah. Well, first, Ross Alhauge is in the constellation of Ophiuchus. As we know, there's this thing, right, that it's the 13th sign, which is not. However, Sam Reynolds did a great presentation with Kepler College recently on the 13th zodiac sign. He also spoke about it last year at Norwalk. And so I invite anybody to just go listen to those. I'm not going to go into it, but it does kind of have this little, he does a great job on talking about that. And so it's in the constellation of Ophiuchus, and it's associated with healing and knowledge. And it's represented as the serpent bearer. It's in the head of the serpent. And those, again, it's not a star where, even though it's a healer, it's not a star that guarantees healing, right? Its basic themes are discernment, especially tied to power, tied to responsible knowledge, choosing integrity over harmony, right? There's that part of discernment. And again, it does not promise a profession in the healing arts, but again, it's more about how the power is carried, whether it's as a healer, a researcher, or a doctor, surgeon. I mean, it is a star that does bring in healers and surgeons and people in the medical profession. Ross Alhague is tied to the myth of Asclepius, who was a demigod. And we knew that his role was a healer, physician, and restorer of life, bringing the people back from the dead.
Erica, great again. Amen.
Big make it's that trying to revive something, right? Because in the myth of Asclepius, which he who is the son of Apollo, the god of light and prophecy, truth, and his mom was Coronis, who was a mortal woman, so makes him a demigod. And Cronus died. And so Apollo rescues Asclepius from the womb. So there's kind of this already from the beginning, this death and bringing someone out of life or to life. And so from the beginning of his life, he sits between worlds already, especially being a demigod. And so after Cronus dies, Apollo rescues him and takes him over to give him to Chiron, the centaur, right? The wounded healer. But Chiron doesn't teach Asclepius magic first. He teaches him discernment. He learns through observation. And I think that's something that's so important about learning about Asclepius. And I'm going to take a pause on his myth because I want to go back to also kind of where a lot of his powers come from. It's obviously not because he's a demigod, son of Apollo and Cronus, but Athena plays a role.
Oh,
I would say here of this dangerous knowledge.
oh,
And so just to tie in the snake theory, Athena is involved in a kind of part of a bigger role in how Asclepius has this healing power. It's not just something he observed and learned, but after Perseus kills Medusa, we know that Athena takes some of Medusa's blood and gives it to Asclepius. Medusa had, in each of her veins, she had her blood was blood that healed, the power to heal, and the other one was the power to destroy. And so Athena, we know, is like the goddess of strategic warfare. She's very strategic in things. And so what she does, she takes the blood, takes the healing blood only, and gives it to Asclepius and withholds the lethal part, the lethal poison that kills. And so she's almost like giving this life-giving blood to Asclepius. And so she acts as like a regulator of wisdom. deciding who's worthy of what power and what should. And so there's this little connection, right? And we know Medusa has the snake in her hair. And so there's this connection there, but also that poison and cure, the same substance is like it's the same thing.
Like
It
alcohol.
Yeah, and but it introduces that ethical discernment and careful judgment. So when we're looking at this archetype of healing and destroying, right? We have medical doctors that can definitely do that, right? Astrologers definitely can do that. We know we have so much knowledge and power by looking at a chart. Therapists also have to be very cautious as to what you're talking about, what to do no harm. And so when we're talking about the turning point with Asclepius, the mystifying moment we would say is when he observed, there's different variations of myth, right? That stories, but I'm sticking with this one, where he observes one serpent or snake died, and he observed another snake revive itself. There's stories that he saw the snake had herbals and medicinal herbs, and that's how he healed it. The other is that he just, venom, right, is the cure. And so he was able to observe that he can definitely take the venom from one snake and heal. And so this serpent teaches him that life can renew itself. Death is not always final, because he learned how to bring the dead back. And he learns that nature has both a cure and a poison. So when we're looking at this fixed star, it is in the charts of many healers and doctors, but it's more about, you have this knowledge, you have this power. How are you using it? And so it's important to know that he observes it. It's not something that Chiron taught him. He learned it on his own through observation. And so the fact that he watched one serpent revive another, and that knowledge came organically, it shows you that this isn't really an instinct type of fixed star, but it's more a conscious star, right? It's in the head. So stars that are, depending on where they are in the constellation, this was in the head. So it's conscious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have heard of that Brady Star and Planets book. So,
That's a good one.
and it's so funny that we're both saying this different ways because Mercury's retrograde in Pisces. So there's this dual nature. But anyway, she talks about it, the principle of the healer, the teacher, or one who is wounded, and everything you're saying about a natural gift in healing. But she also says what one chooses to heal may vary, and it can lead to a life in politics or other areas of social healing. So it's at 22 degrees of Sagittarius now. We talked about, the president, his moon is right there. But what would you say about Taylor Swift and how her social role is healing?
Yeah. Should I put up her chart?
Yeah, possible of regard.
Okay. Can I share? Let's see.
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Ah,
I
okay,
made you a
cool.
co-host.
Awesome. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. As you can see, her sun is at 21 degrees. I am using a Pisces rising chart. It's closer to noon. I know a lot of people are saying that she's a Capricorn rising. Some people say Scorpio. I have vacillated between all of them. As somebody who is very in tune with Taylor Swift and her music, and since day one, I keep following it. And the Pisces rising is the one that makes the most sense, but also it's a noon chart. So it's like, we'll keep it like neutral. Sun's at the top of in the northern hemisphere of the chart, right? Above the horizon. So it's visible. But we have it here at 21 degrees. I wouldn't use the midheaven because we don't know, right, if this is her chart. But this is my own rectified time, which I think it had 11:56 or 11:53. I can't remember. But again, just new chart, whatever. But we have her sun conjunct Ross Alhauge. And in that book that you have, Bernadette describes somebody who has sun conjunct Ross Alhague is someone who has a career in which one may be involved with stories and of human nature. And for me, Taylor Swift is such a good example of Ross Alhague because she is a healer. I don't care what anyone tells me. Her music has healed. A lot of people have said that her music has really touched them. Her public identity has always been tied to storytelling, her emotional truth. And she does this by writing her songs, and she names patterns, she exposes dynamics, she puts language to experience and things people can't, that people feel, but they can't verbalize. And so Taylor here is the healer, who studies the wound closely and explains it. And to me, she's again a very modern example of like a visible healer.
Well, she's
And
got that moon, Jupiter, and Chiron conjunction. So
yeah,
the emotions and the moon rules the people. Cancer, the US is a Cancer sun, and her Chiron's very close to the US Cancer sun, which is at 13 degrees. And her Jupiter expands everything and it's exalted in the sign of Cancer. So people, everyday people who connect into her chart or connect with her really feel that. And like she speaks their stories. Like it's like that the song by Roberta Flack, Killing Me Softly. She
yeah.
has that nature of her energy where people get really drawn in and feel like they're experiencing the healing power of her music.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I don't have it in this chart, but I work with asteroids as well. And she's got the asteroid Apollo right there by Jupiter and Chiron. So there's that. Apollo to me is one of the muses, one of the ones that, it's the poet, the musician. And so people usually who have this star also have that artist, musical artist. And so there's that. I just find it that she also has Apollo in there. But you could see her knowledge, everything that she puts out, it's her own living experience. All that pain that she puts out, ethical battles around ownership and power. She's been in this battle that she finally won over her masters. There's always like a lot of ethics that come up with Taylor Swift. But yeah, she turns her personal pain into collective healing. She names betrayal. She names the power imbalance. We know that. She does
I love,
not like our president.
I love that song. I like my friends cancel. I think
Oh, that's a good one.
that's a
I
good
really
song
love.
that really
That's a
brings
good
up the
one.
betrayal and those
Yeah.
feelings of injustice.
Yeah. And another reason why I chose Taylor Swift is because if you're a Taylor Swift fan, you know that her album, I put this picture here with Taylor Swift. This is her Reputation album. And this was one of like the times when that album came out where there was when she got canceled with the whole Kim Kanye situation that they put her on the spot and they changed her wording and so what she said wasn't what she said. They manipulated what she said. And so everyone canceled Taylor Swift. I think this is back in 2016, 2017. And so she wrote Reputation as a result of that. And it's a revenge. It's about power dynamics. It's her being angry for being betrayed. It's just an album where the theme is snakes. That whole album is snakes. Her Reputation tour was all snakes. Her snake that was in her tour was called Karen. And so there's a lot of just like symbolic. So like when we're looking at fixed stars in general, we're not just looking at the myth, right? There's so many ways that we can look at. We can interpret it psychologically, behaviorally, or one of the fun ways that we love to do is just symbolically. Oh my gosh, the snake appeared. There's a symbol. Oh, look, Ross Alhauge, the moon's there today. Just the symbol. And so she also carries that symbol of the snake. I believe she was probably born with the sun rising with Ross Alhague because the Hellenistic rising is around her birthday. So she carries this mythic archetype throughout her whole life. She doesn't just wear this costume one time, all the time. And then to kind of close off this whole Taylor Swift Reputation thing, when this whole scandal came out with Kim, she wrote a tweet. I don't know if you heard about it, but there was a tweet that said, "Oh, the snakes are out." And she was meaning it towards Taylor. And so she put all these snakes. And so there's like, this constant theme. But the biggest thing is she wrote in her concert, she's doing this voice over. And there's this one like, Taylor can't come to the phone right now. Why? Because she's dead. And she revives herself with this album. It's a new Taylor. So she died and she revived herself. So there's this constant theme within like the Swiftie community with states, ethics and ethic battles and, her using her power in the right way. And I think that she has to be cautious with what she does because anything that Taylor touches or says, it blows up. We know that. If Taylor starts making sourdough, everyone's making sourdough. If Taylor wore this otter shirt from the aquarium, what is it from what's that aquarium place? Oh my gosh,
Right?
Monterey. She was wearing the otters t-shirt at one of her movies. It sold out. Anything, all the makeup she uses, if someone sees her holding something, people go buy it. And so there is this power that she just naturally carries that she has to be careful, which is why I think she doesn't talk a lot about politics.
Mm.
She's got so much power, so she's got to really learn, right, this discernment. But yeah, we all know that she often triggers public ethical conversations,
Mhm.
not just in artistic ones, but who she dates, what she says, everything.
Yes, her
And
latest album triggered some ethical debates.
oh, I think it's a wonderful album.
It's
But
good
yeah,
too. I
yeah,
think it's
and
good too.
there was a lot of fixed stars with that actual particular album of the release date, which I probably will do something which is really interesting. But one of the really cool things that I wanted to talk about with Taylor Swift, which I told you with Zoe Kravitz, before I show you, just so you could see how stars can work with conjunctions, progressions, solar charts, however that may be. But Zoe Kravitz was being interviewed sometime last year by Jimmy Fallon. And she was talking about how she was doing some construction in her house. So she went and stayed at Taylor's house in New York. And so Taylor let her stay there for several months. Well, Zoe Kravitz is known to love snakes. She owns a snake. So she brought her snake to Taylor's house.
Huh.
And for some reason, the snake got into a hole in the bathroom. And so it got inside the cabinet. And so she was able to grab the tail, but the snake got inside the walls. And so she started freaking out. There's this blue snake in the house. So she's like, I need to tear down the vanity and go get it. So then Taylor's bodyguard walks in and Zoe tells her, please don't tell Taylor this. I'm about to tear apart her bathroom. I'm going to remodel it completely, but please don't tell her until it's done. I will tell her this happened. I just don't want her to worry. So he's like, okay. So she fixes the house or the bathroom. And so eventually her and Taylor were talking and Taylor's like, oh, I knew from the beginning. He told me right away. Even the power, like there's there's Zoe Kravitz, right? And I'm going to show you. This is the snake incident. Zoe Kravitz's chart, we have the midpoint between her Sun Mercury conjunction at 9, which is actually on Antares, which is the planet or the fixed star of obsession. And Uranus is at 19 or 29. And so the midpoint is 22 degrees Sagittarius. It's right conjunct her sun. But you could see how Zoe Kravitz entered into Taylor's life, right? Or not entered, but like is part of her life and how the snake just manipulated into her home. And yet that snake did not give Zoe Kravitz mercy. That, her bodyguard said, no, I'm going to tell her. So you see that power and discernment also like working through other people, but in her home. I just found it so fascinating that the midpoint between all of us, something sudden, right? Uranus, the disruption, Mercury and Sun, the light and Mercury, there's it moving away. And then the midpoint, boom, Ross Alhauge. So I just found that super interesting that happened.
Zoe has her Mars in Aries squaring Taylor's Jupiter in Cancer and Moon in Cancer. So she gives her this gift of, you can stay in my home. And the snake, I'm thinking of snake as being a Mars type animal. I'm not sure if I can look it up. But
Yeah.
yeah, causes this tension in their relationship. And let's talk about the president a little bit as well. Did you
Yeah.
think anything else about Taylor Swift?
No, I think with Taylor, I think I pretty much covered it.
No, this is a great example of how the fixed star snow. Okay. Oh, okay. Snakes are Pluto, Scorpio, and Saturn is
Okay.
what Rexy bills, but they bite. So I'm giving it some Mars connotations.
Yeah. And Ptolemy described, he also described a lot of each fixed star. He gave it a planetary nature. The planetary nature of Ross Alhauge is Saturn, Venus.
Mhm.
So we have,
Yeah, your gift comes with a little bit of a
well, and Saturn here contributes the discipline,
yeah,
responsibility, limits, consequence, right? Where
yeah.
the Venus is that knowledge, the craft, the refinement, the harmony. Say, like learning when to use that power and when not to use it. I want to go back still with the myth. Asclepius learned, right, how to revive the dead. But I think this is where the crossing of the line, right? There's a crossing of the line. This is where I keep talking about discernment and knowing how to use that knowledge and power wisely. Because Asclepius, he becomes so skilled, right, that he begins to resurrect the dead. And that's where the story changes. Zeus intervened, not because Asclepius is bad, but because he's disrupting cosmic order, the death structures the heavens, the cosmos. And removing that disrupts it. And he also is like mortal hands now hold this gold level power because he's a demigod. And so essentially Asclepius was struck down by Zeus's lightning, and Apollo, his father, was furious and demanded justice. So there's that justice, the law. There is the law that comes with this fixed star, that justice. And so after his death, Zeus ultimately places Asclepius amongst stars in the constellation of Ophiuchus and the head of the serpent bearer. I think the snake holds knowledge, and there's this correction for imbalance, right? That comes with that. And so I think it's important to know that there was a crossing of a line, right? And that's where this star also, it brings the wisdom comes after experience.
Mhm.
There's that trial
Yeah.
that comes.
So I also have the Little Book of Fixed Stars by Elizabeth Hazel, excuse me, and Michael Minkowski. Minkowski also contributed to this, and they say about Ross Alhauge, the head of the snake charmer. It's eccentric, and I would say Taylor Swift is definitely eccentric and scholarly. Like when she got engaged, like she was like your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married. Doctors and healers of individuals or society may be secretive, skeptical, suspicious, or a sexual adventurer. Drugs, alcohol, herbs, potions, possible addictions, overindulgence, humanitarian and imaginative, prone to bites, rabies, toxic contamination, and risk of infections and epidemics. The president has brought us an epidemic, a sickly spouse, eventually able to gain wealth and the accumulation of goods, maneuvers to attract and retain the attention of others. So I could say that about both of them,
Yeah.
and the president,
Yeah.
and they both have things at 26 of fixed stars. She has her Mars there at 26 Scorpio, and he has his Mars at 26 Leo. So that's enough. Like they have
Yeah.
that square, and yeah,
They don't get along, that's for sure. But
yeah,
yeah, the danger here with Asclepius is doing too much.
mhm,
And we have to think about with our president, but it's the head of the serpent charmer. So it's about, you have to remember, it's a serpent charmer, someone who is charming the snake. He doesn't kill the snake, he's learning to control it. So it's about controlling your power. And so, who do we have here right now that is completely just the power is completely just, it's being used wrong, right? The power that the president holds and how he's using it, right? And
very
so
important.
it's something he has to learn that's about mastery rather than domination, right? Calm authority versus dangerous forces. And so, yeah, I think that's he falls really, especially with his moon there. I feel like there's so much more targets like on families, women, children are being affected with and so when you have his moon there, we're just looking at a universal significator of the moon, right? We know that he's not very fond of women. He's not very fond of families and the less fortunate. And so the way he's maneuvering these forces, I feel, right? It's overreach. That's the failing point of in learning restraint. That's one of the biggest relationship to limits with this fixed star is learning when to restrain from using your knowledge, right? As astrologers, we have to do that. Like I never talk about the fixed star of Endometrix. Why? Because I don't want to do any harm. There's no need for me to be bringing up these like
Yeah.
these stars of
Widowmaker.
transformation.
Yeah, I don't think
Right.
you want to know about the Widowmaker.
No, they don't. They really don't. Trust me. I have Saturn there, so at
I
10 degrees.
know you're a widow.
And I am a widow. I widowed really young, and I have Saturn on the ascendant. So I was 26 years old when my husband passed away, and so yeah, and so it's
Yeah.
that's what's so important, with all of us astrologers and therapists. And there's only certain like do no harm. How are we going to use this knowledge and power and wisdom? And I think that's like what's important with this, right?
Yeah, what's interesting. Ooh, people, this is Eberdeen Hoffman's book on fixed stars, and it's really interesting. So, getting back to the president, do you mind if I show his chart?
Nope, not at all.
He has his moon south node conjunct right conjunct this fixed star of the snake charmer. And at one point, and I think he's done it multiple times, he loves, he's got this 29-degree Leo rising. He's a PT Barnum and Bailey. He's always holding court in a circus kind of energy. And he's talked about that poem or that story about the snake, about where a woman carried a snake over to the other side of a river and then the snake killed her. And it's like, why did you let me in? You could Google it, the President Trump, the snake, if you want to see it. But yeah, I always think that like he always is saying this to his crowds, and he has charmed them as marks for his hypnotism. He has this Mercury square Neptune. He has the ability to cast a spell over certain people. So others of us are like, don't get it at all. But the people who fall under a spell really are big on him. And he's got a Venus Saturn conjunction, which is interesting, seeing as this star is a Venus Saturn star. Saturn in detriment doesn't make the greatest decision. But getting back to Jeffrey Epstein, number one, something you said, he talked about Zoe Kravitz. So she has that would fall on in his chart as well. Her sun Uranus midpoint. And she has a movie called Blink Twice, which is about people who go to an island. It's very reminiscent of the whole the Jeffrey's Island kind of thing. And one of the themes is about giving people a drug where they can't remember what happened to them the night before. People thus influenced tend to medical or hallucinatory drugs, stimulating foods, too much good living. Well, we know the leader has too much good living. He's always eating, well, I would call it good living, but excessive.
Yeah.
Overindulgence in alcohol. He doesn't drink, but this hallucinatory drugs is very interesting. Several people in the administration look like they're on stuff.
Yeah.
Mark Rubio looks like he is coked out of his mind,
Yeah.
which he never did before. Lindsey Graham looks like he's so drunk. He's not
They're losing their minds.
about that Department of the Pete Hegseth. We all know he's got a huge problem.
Yeah.
I wonder if hallucinatory drugs are going to come up related to him as we find out more and more about how involved he is with this person, Jeffrey.
I'm glad you brought this up because that interview that Zoe Kravitz gave, and she was at Jimmy Fallon to talk about that movie.
Mm.
But she gave the story of Taylor had a snake in the
Uh-huh.
same interview with Jimmy Fallon. So that's what's funny. I didn't make that connection until right now, but yeah.
Oh, a little girl with a conjunction of the star had sugar diabetes at age 9. Interesting.
Yeah, and some other interesting people that actually have this fixed star. So we see it in movies, right? We see it in
Mhm.
books. And one of them is Mary Shelley,
Uh-huh.
the maker of Frankenstein. Yeah, she's got the South Node at 19 Sagittarius in her moon. Yeah,
Mm.
and we know she wrote the famous book, Frankenstein, and the actual Frankenstein book has Venus at 22 Sagittarius. So I'm like, okay, this is so perfect. She's literally the Frankenstein movie. What is that? Literally, you're putting together this monster, right? And that knowledge and power, like, should you revive this person? It's literally Ross Alhauge reviving from the dead. And then one of my movies, when I was thinking about the star, I'm like, okay, what kind of movie? And then I thought about the movie Death Becomes Her.
Oh,
So Goldie Hawn has her Mercury at a conjunct Ross Alhauge. And she
ah.
was in that movie where they're so obsessed with youth. And so they drink this mortal portion that makes them young forever. But then they realize they start to fall apart. And so there's this like working with limits, right? Boundaries, which I found really interesting.
You know what's interesting? Jeffrey Epstein with Frankenstein, he was really into trying to create humans and do some kind of genetics, eugenics, all that kind of stuff. So Frankenstein really fits into that story as well. They started digging up things at Zorro Ranch. We'll see what comes up about experimentation over the
Yeah.
next, because that story is not going away. It's a big story of the South Node and Virgo. Virgo
Yeah.
is the maiden, and it speaks to Pluto and Aquarius coming and exposing them for who they really are. These really awful people who think they can do whatever they want to whoever they want, and they're going to be facing some. Mm.
Yeah, well, when you have medical issues like ethics, right, where when to proceed and when not to, right? Medical discernment, I guess you could say. And someone who kind of falls into like the medical world of crossing borders is Gisela Pearl. I'm not sure if you know who she was, but she was the doctor or OB that saved a bunch of women during the Holocaust because if they were pregnant, they were going to be sent separately to other camp. I don't remember the story exactly, but if you were pregnant, you were doomed pretty much.
Mhm.
And so what she did is she facilitated secret abortions so that they would be protected. And so there's this doctor there playing with these boundaries of death, that life and death, and using her own ethical discernment. And so she's got, I mean, this was old, she's got 17 degrees sun, as her sun's at 17 degrees Sagittarius. And I think too, when you're using the luminaries or your chart ruler conjunct a fixed star, you might be able to go a little more than 3 degrees, but I think hers is right at 3. But then there kind of goes that when you were mentioned with Jeffrey Epstein, like you're going to see that there's probably some of those medical things where he's trying to manipulate, right? That fixed star does fall into those kind of dynamics. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Interest And then this is Robeson, Vivian Robeson, The Fixed Stars and Constellations. And this, in terms of Ross, it says it gives misfortune through women, perverted tastes, and mental depravity. So that seems to really fit with Taylor
Jeffrey
Swift,
Epstein.
with Epstein, but the president. Taylor Swift has misfortune with women, Kim Kardashian, Blake Lively,
Hmm.
so there's these
Hmm.
themes that
And
she
which is why
always
I feel that
Charlie
she is a
X.
Pisces rising because that Venus in the 12th house just fits so perfectly. There's so much self undoing she does with relationships, so much self undoing with women,
Yeah, so that, but as well as the president, yeah.
and the president.
Definitely perverted taste, grabbing
Yep.
people who don't want to
Yep.
be grabbed. The mental
Yeah.
depravity, loving this, war and all this kind of mess.
That
And he
doesn't
has,
mean that, because you have a fixed star conjunct, especially, specifically this one too, that you're going to have all these things or that you're going to die by a sick mate but these were older delineations that are frightening, right? And now obviously that have evolved, but yeah, they do fall into that dynamic of the, like you said, that perversion and things like that.
so we see in two prominent people how it shows up. And in both of their charts, both of them an ability to enrapture and charm people. Both of them had that snake charmer myth. Both of them had like these death and rebirth kind of things where they got canceled and came back. Her with reputation, which is so Venus Saturn, you know, and then him with he lost the election but he's back. He's gone bankrupt a bunch of times and revived by Russian money and other things. So very interesting to see both
Yeah.
of them and how Zoe Kravitz brings in this link that brings in the big scandal of
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Them
And I think
doing
just to bring in a little bit of the psychological level, right? Or counseling themes, and how to work. Like, okay, so you have this fixed star. So what are the themes that can come up, right? Like, let's talk about just logical, like, what in a session, but it's can be beyond what I keep saying, that it's about learning how to manage your knowledge and your power, but it's also teaching you how things work. You also have, it's someone who comes in with this fixed star. Could be someone that struggles with limits, someone who's constantly burned out from moral dilemmas. Like, for example, let's say like a veterinarian who's constantly having to put dogs down. You're in that limit or that boundary in between worlds, and you could suffer from burnout from doing that kind of work. And so that this fixed star can bring up. But I think at the same time, when it comes to like that burnout, is learning that not all suffering should be removed. You can't help everyone. That's like part of, but learning how to master things versus destroying them, learning and honing down techniques, skills. Most importantly, though, like knowing that these people may have a difficulty of knowing when to pull back, when to say no, because of that healing aspect of knowing that you can help. But yeah, it can bring moral fatigue. Action always has consequences because of all of that. We see the consequences, right? So it creates this internal conflict of, if I can help, am I obligated to help? So it's not just like doing wrong, right? But also at the same time, from a counseling perspective and burnout or moral fatigue, because I know this happens with therapists. It did happen to me. Over 20 years of mental health experience, I burned out at year 16. So you have to learn how to take care of yourself, when you have this knowledge, this wisdom, right? So a lot of times these individuals that have Ross Alhauge, they may feel compelled to fix and to understand and to try to fix situations.
Make America
And,
great
and
again.
then they go great again, right? There's like that
Go
strong
first.
inner authority, right?
That's
With
it.
ethical
The way he
compass.
wants it.
Yes, his ethical compass is like
His,
off
yeah.
the chart, right? So there is that strong inner authority with that moral compass. It's learning restraint, but it doesn't mean that the person needs to be passive or it's a passive star. It's just when not to act.
Mhm.
And our president needs to learn when not to act.
Well, I think it's a little late to be learning anything.
Right, right.
So
And Taylor Swift is learning when not to act. She keeps quiet because when she opens her mouth, all hell breaks loose, right? And we didn't talk about this, but the movie Wicked. The movie
yeah.
Wicked has a strong Ross Alhague. It's Mercury conjunct Ross Alhague, and we know Elphaba, right? She's
When
a
it
good
was so
witch.
it's strong Russ Alhag. What do you mean? When it was premiered?
Yeah, so the release date.
The release date.
Yeah, did you want me to pull up the chart real quick?
Oh, sure.
So, yeah, so this is the chart, and I use midnight, and I
Mhm.
use a New York time. And I mean, we can use the houses, but I'm mostly using the chart itself. But you see here, Mercury conjunct Raza Hag is the mind of the healer and the truth teller. And Elphaba, we know she knows too much. She learns too much. And at the beginning of the movie, she's almost like Asclepius. Her mom was mortal, and her father was the wizard, right? I wouldn't say he's immortal, but he's the wizard. And so she inherited his powers through a potion, right? Which is, Asclepius, this fixed star, also is known for potions and herbs. So people who work with herbals and things like that. And so she learns from the very beginning that she's got this power and she doesn't know how to use it. And so throughout this movie, we see here Mercury, here we have it. There's dialogues, there's music, and the words are the most powerful in this movie because this society's making Elphaba look like she's the bad witch, but she's actually a good witch. Here in this movie, the animals don't speak. The wizard actually doesn't have power. But at the end of the day, Elphaba is learning how to use those powers and the Emery book. That book, she's the only one that was able to really read it, the book of spells. So there's this duality with the good witch and the bad witch. And Glinda, who's the good witch, she's kind of put to the town as like she has to speak bad of Elphaba, but that's actually one of her best friends, and she was a good witch. And so she's in this like moral, ethical dilemma of knowing that Elphaba really isn't evil, but she has to put up this front. I saw that this is a way of, it's about truth and her becoming who she really is. Learning about her power, it's after consequences, right? She does play some spells and stuff, and so there's consequences after that. And then with Fiyero, he puts a spell that protects him so that no one can kill him. So I thought that was kind of cool that he stays alive because she puts the spell on him. And so she chooses who she's going to harm and does this in this cautious way. But yet at the end, they melt her. But little do they know that she was this trickster, right? Or there was something hidden that she actually went underneath and her and Fiyero escaped. So there's kind of that archetype of the town or the people killed her. Zeus throwing them up in the stars. And she literally, her and Fiyero left and lived happily ever after. So there's also that kind of little archetype with that. So yeah, I just wanted to share that real quickly because I thought that the movie Wicked is such a great example of Mercury questioning the official story and all these propagandas that, just left her kind of always trying to speak her truth and trying to.
Yes, I looked up when the book was published. I was trying to see if there was anything on Ross Alhauge back September 29th, 1995. Now, the moon was in Sagittarius for that day.
I
Oh,
have, let me, I have a,
but I don't think it wasn't on Ross Alhauge.
well, the
It's really
novel,
cool.
yeah, September 29th. I did put when it debuted. And when it debuted, Pluto was at 18 degrees Sagittarius on Broadway. So it came out in 2003. I got to see it live.
Yeah,
But
me
yeah, the
too.
actual Broadway came out in 2003. And it shows here, I have 18 degrees Sagittarius. It was Pluto was conjunct Ross Alhague.
Okay, when they get the performance. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. When the first play came out in New York. So that's cool too.
that's
Um,
very cool. This has been so interesting. Thank you for telling us all about this fixed star and how it showed up. It was really interesting to see how it showed up into famous people, learning more about the myth. And so, if people want to learn more about you and your work, how can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my YouTube at erikabeach.com. You can find me on TikTok also at Erika Beach. Instagram, I am under Erika Luna Moon, or you can do Erika Beach. That's my personal account, and you can find me through there as well. Or you can find me at Nightlight doing some of the webinars. We have one tomorrow and some of our year 3 classes and stuff like that. But I thank you so much for having me. I know that we could keep talking, right? There's still so much to talk about this fixed star, but I wanted to like talk about just an introduction, just a little sprinkle, let's just say. I do have a fixed star video that's coming out on YouTube. It's already been done. I'm having some hard time downloading right now because it's a large file, so I have to wait a few more days. But stay tuned on my YouTube channel. I will be coming out with a pretty lengthy introduction to fixed stars for everyone.
Oh, that's great. So people can learn more about see Qurans in action, grasp just hearing about it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I will go in more detail.
Well, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure talking with you. And thanks everyone for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I always forget to say that at the beginning, but if you're still watching, please do so. Okay.
Thank you so much, Celeste.
Take care.